Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. And today we have some interesting news coming out of. I really need to get used to saying this because it's kind of stupid. Instead of 20th Century Fox Studios, it's now just 20th Century Studios. Um, and basically, uh, they've announced that the next film in the Planet of the Apes franchise that is going to be another reboot. Um, this is a horrible move. I don't know if Fox is technically autonomous at this point in the sense that they're allowed to do certain things if they want to, like greenlight projects and continue with things. But I would assume Disney had some kind of a hand in this because it's a very big budget brand. Because they have had three successful movies. Um, because they had Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and then War for the Planet of the Apes, which the last one of which came out in 2017. And so it's a series that requires a good amount of money put into it, and it's been fruitful. It's given them a lot of money recently, or at least this most recent trilogy. So now we move into this news that the next film in this series is going to actually be another reboot. And there's more than a few problems with that idea. First of all, you have a fan base that is gathered around those first three films that seem to enjoy them and like them. They've been coming back for three movies because each one of those movies has made a good amount of money. So you're going to be pissing off that fan base because I'm sure they want to see this universe continue in some way, shape, or form. Um, Now, this isn't necessarily stating it could be something like a soft reboot. It could be maybe they're doing something with the original film. They're skipping ahead because that film in the original Planet of the Apes universe, the whole where the apes rise up and overthrow the humans is way before the events of the first film because they time travel. So maybe they're going to do that kind of an angle. Um, and I could see that maybe working in a sense, but at the same time, you're going away from kind of what's been making those earlier films very successful. Um, so you run into that problem. You run into the problem that now you're going to kind of have to garner in a new audience to see this film because Planet of the Apes is a well-known brand at this point with the rebooted stuff. The originals were amazing. I really the first one I think everybody can unanimously say it's the best one out of that original bunch. I think they made six movies. I want to say, and then when you go back and you look at the recent three movies, obviously the production is very different, but you see that fan base is still there and still rabid, or not rabid, but still wanting to consume the product or consume the media. So I think you're going to piss them off with this. And the other thing is, people don't necessarily forget the fact that if they actually do wind up going through with this, it's going to be the third time this franchise has been rebooted. Obviously, you have the original series of films from I believe it was the 70s all the way through the mid 80s. And then you had the attempted reboot with Mark Wahlberg in 2001, I believe. And then after that, you had this recent trilogy of films, which is now come to an end, and they're going to reboot it into this third reboot. We don't have a set date for this, although we do know that Fox or 20th Century, whatever the hell you want to call it, they were shopping around for a director not that long ago, and they were kind of trying to get certain things off the ground, and they did leave the idea open initially when they announced the film. That it could be a reboot or it could be a continuation of the current timeline. So it is nice that they did give a little bit of a heads up in that sense, but when you look at the actual product, or when you look at what they're doing now, it's not a good idea because you have a good fan base and you have not made a shit movie. That's the other thing I don't get about this is usually when they go for this angle of, oh, we're going to reboot something. It's usually when the films are starting to degrade, when they're starting to make less money, and you think that you can get it back on track with a reboot. these films aren't necessarily losing money. They've all been profitable. So that's kind of odd in and of itself. Although an ulterior motive could also be the fact that this movie was in development way before the Disney Fox merger was finalized. So maybe Disney just decided they wanted to put the kibosh on it and reboot it, like they've been announcing they're going to do with various other Fox properties, including Home Alone. Um, so there's a lot to kind of digest with an announcement like that, in the sense of, what roads can this lead us down? I mentioned earlier about possibly doing something where it's like a soft reboot where they just redo the original film, the Charlton Heston film, and it's in the future and stuff like that. So you can kind of leave the events of those three movies on their own, and it still takes place in the same universe. But they haven't really left that door open at this point now, because they've announced that it is going to be a reboot, not a soft reboot, a reboot. But obviously that could change in the near future because of the way that Hollywood, the Hollywood media machine works. They'll come out and they'll say something, and then a couple months later they say, "Oh, no, things have changed. It's actually this now." So I don't think we're going to know anything solid for a while at this rate. But it is interesting to see some progression on this, because this has been kind of something that's, a lot of people were curious if they were going to do another one in the same timeline after War for the Planet of the Apes. And I personally, I'm not as attached to the new ones as I am to the originals. Um, and even though the new ones I don't think are necessarily bad movies, again, I just not something that I've been overly attracted to. I kind of like the nuance of the guys and the makeup and stuff like that, from the originals. It was all very interesting, and the makeup was amazing for those films, especially at the time. Um, so there's a bunch of stuff in there that I kind of little quirks that I like about the originals over the newer ones, and also the fact that I think the originals, especially the first movie, was one of the really great science fiction films of the '70s. Even though it was one of those movies that kind of it got infamous mostly because of Charlton Heston's quotable lines in the film. Uh, but yeah, I mean, you move on from that and you go to the Mark Wahlberg one, and you're just like, what the hell are you thinking? Like, there's chimpanzee Abe Lincoln at the end of it. It's like, okay, this is just getting weird. Like, they tried to do the reveal thing, like at the end of the first one, where Charlton Heston is screaming at the Statue of Liberty because they blew up the world and all that crap. And they tried to do the same thing where Mark Wahlberg winds up in Washington D.C. and he runs up the stairs to the Lincoln Memorial, and he sees that it's a monkey instead of a man. It's so I mean it's a goofy visual. Like, I understand what they were trying to do, but you could have come up with something a lot better. That feels like that was something that was come up with last minute at the last the last script reading before they actually went forward and did the movie. Or that somebody suggested as a joke and some idiot took seriously. But like I said, this is kind of an interesting thing to digest. It's not. There's a lot of questions that still have to get answered moving forward, but now that we know the path this is going down, we can kind of gauge what's going on initially anyway. So with that, I will be signing off, but as usual, I like you to put your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about this situation? Do you think that they should be rebooting it? Do you think that they should continue with the previous line of films that they've done and just do another one of those? Or do you think that maybe with that trilogy done, they should kind of just let Planet of the Apes lie for a while, and kind of don't try to milk the cow dry, so to speak. As usual, put your thoughts in the comments below. Again, I like to read them. Hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?